pop those drinks. It's time for Sports Around the Bar. Welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. As always, I am Jake, your bartender, and I'm joined on center stool by Drew. And man, would you call him a great with Jordy Nelson? He's no longer with us, in the NFL at least. Talking about him like he's dying, but
I absolutely think he's a great. I absolutely do.
I agree with you, man. I think it's going to be sad to see him go. Obviously, I thought he had more in the tank. You know, we're going to be talking about Jordy Nelson tonight. We're going to talk some AAF as well. We're going to talk Nate Oates moving on from Buffalo to Alabama and the SEC and how that's going to affect all the coaching landscape in college basketball. We're also going to talk about these NFL rule changes. We had a lot going on. Most of it's football, but that's okay. We'll talk a little bit of basketball as well. Drew, let's start with Jordy Nelson, though, because obviously, great Packer receiver for years and years and years. He's moved on. He spent that 1 year out there in Oakland and decided, I don't really want to keep going anymore. Do you think he could have wound up with another team?
I do. Shea, beer is great, not just good. Will, I'm glad you could join us. When you talk about Jordy Nelson, and I know everyone's going to be like, well, he had Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. But you're talking about a guy that created so much space between corners at the very last moment. You're talking about a guy that literally was a red zone threat at all times and a home run hitter at any point in time that he touched the ball. I think it's overshadowed a little bit with Aaron Rodgers because he had Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball. But I think if he would have gone anywhere and had the opportunity to play, I think he would have done the exact same thing anywhere he went. Maybe even with the Titans with Mariota throwing the ball.
Well, I don't know about that, but I will give you that he is one of the best, I think, for generating space without having that blazing speed. I mean, he never was the fastest guy, but he always managed to find that wiggle room to make those long catches happen. Absolutely fantastic receiver. I hate to see him go. I think he had more in the tank. I would like to see him sign with the Titans even this year. If we could have picked him up on a cheap contract, maybe we could have got something out of him, and then we could have said, well, Marcus Mariota can't even hit Jordy Nelson. It's time to move on.
I think that's probably what decided his retirement. He probably didn't like the options that were given to him or the money that was given to him. I'm sure. Actually, I know for a fact that he was probably given some kind of interest. Because, I mean, he went to the Raiders, and we all know where the Raiders were last year. They were complete rebuild mode.
Well, let me say this. It was before they traded Amari Cooper. It was before they traded Khalil Mack. Maybe he went there and said, we can get the passing game going with me and Jared Cook and Amari Cooper, and then all those guys get traded. He's sitting there looking at John Gruden like, really? Well, this is the last year I'm going to give you?
That's the issue with the NFL. No one looks about what you have done in the past. They look about what you just did recently. And when everyone looks at him, go, man, you did nothing last year.
I agree, and maybe the money wasn't there. I think this is kind of like Gronkowski, like we said, that he wasn't 100% sold on retiring. He probably looked around, saw that there really wasn't the kind of interest, at least the dollar level he wanted to be paid at, and then he moved on. I mean, I think he was just looking at it like, I don't want to go get beat up for $2 million a year to where I'm going to be the third or fourth option. Nobody's going to be worrying about me anymore. So props to him, I guess, for not necessarily going out on top, but going out before it got too hard to watch.
Absolutely.
And I think that can really help you if you're trying to get to the Hall of Fame.
And as Peter Griffin, a.k.a. Brian, how long are you going to be banned from your account, man, said, football is great, but sometimes you got to get out, keep your money, and protect your brains. He's absolutely right. This is what this guy decided to do. Like I said,
spent a decade in the fight.
I'm sure he had tons of options, but didn't like the money. Just wasn't worth moving his life, his family, and just wherever they were offering him to go. I think it's a shame. I wish the Kansas City Chiefs would offer him money because he's from Kansas. That's where he went to college at. I'd like it to see him go there, but unfortunately, I guess they didn't offer him or he didn't like what they had to offer.
I totally agree, man. And that, to me, is the most mysterious part, is somebody had to have offered him something. So I'm a little shocked at this. Maybe they sat there and looked at his tape in Oakland, and a lot of these teams are like, we can't give you the roster spot. Not after the last year. But it still wasn't like he put up the worst year in the world. When you look at all the weapons they subtracted, I would have thought he had something going on, but who knows? Maybe this time of year he was expecting to sign with someone. He says, my body's not right. It's time to get out.
Yeah.
And maybe Brian is right in the comments, and it's just one of those things where he's feeling out. And he says, I got to make the right decision for my health and my future going forward.
Jerry, what's going on, man? Glad you could join us this evening.
Absolutely. He also said, Brian says, 3 more days on that ban. Well, we can't wait to see you back, no matter what profile you're on.
Still would like to know what you did, but don't comment it.
Andrew also says, bye-bye AAF and hello XFL. Let's talk about that.
Let's do it.
I mean, when I heard this news today, I didn't believe it. I still don't really believe it. When your chairman in Tom Dundon, owner of the Hurricanes in hockey, if you need a little more perspective on it, this guy's a multi-billionaire, right? He just put $250 million.
Me and him are on the same shelf.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, he's you some days, him some days. Right. I know it goes back and forth, but you look at this guy, and you look at him just pumping $250 million of his own money into the AAF like it's nothing 5 weeks ago when there was all these rumors about them not being able to make payroll and everything. And you want to tell me they're going to be broke by next year? I just don't believe this. I think this is him trying to finagle and get the NFL to start sending a lot more of this young and better talent over to the AAF so that they can put a better product on the field. I think that's where more this is about.
I got to agree with you completely. Real quick, Frank, he says his heels are burnt out, man. I agree that Jordy Nelson doesn't have the speed that he did have, but his game was never about speed. It was about route running and hands. I mean, as old as you get, you still can run routes. You can still catch the ball. But I agree. He definitely got burnt out.
And he was losing speed and everything, but I still think there was something left in the tank, especially when you see what he did in Oakland. If you could sit there and put him in a better offense like the Chiefs have, that he could be the third, fourth guy and catch the ball when everybody forgets about him, I think he'd excel. But obviously he doesn't feel the same, and he's ready to hang it up.
When you talk about what the Alliance Football League is going to do here, I mean, I think you're right. I think you nailed it right on the head. They want better talent on the field.
And this is to me, it's just a threat. They know Vince McMahon's coming in next year. They're trying to sit there and tell the NFL, like, look, you guys need us around because you want us battling with Vince McMahon. You don't want Vince McMahon's league in the XFL to have a lot of success and try to eat up your part of the pie. So if you want to keep us around, you got to start giving us some guys that can play football. And not that there hasn't been any talent in the AAF, but you look at it, there is still a huge dividing gap between the NFL and the AAF, and if they can bring on some of these practice squad guys, if they can bring in some of these younger football players and give them a chance to make a name for themselves, maybe it helps them out, helps them further their career, and it also helps the AAF because they're going to put a better product out there.
I highly doubt it'll be any kind of practice squad players. The NFL's not going to pay
That is what they want.
The NFL's not going to pay any player to go off to the Alliance Football League and get hurt. I'm done with the AAF. I hate that. I hate it. It's the Alliance Football League at this point for me. Aaron, real quick, and this is a little off subject, but I think it's something we're talking about. He goes, any thoughts on what the Giants are going to do coming this upcoming draft and what they should be doing?
At the very least, there needs to be a quarterback off the board in my books. You cannot ride for another year with Eli Manning and just waste guys like Saquon Barkley's career. I would have said Odell Beckham, but they made sure they weren't wasting his career anymore, and they sent him off to Cleveland. I think they need to absolutely focus on that. They need to focus on bringing in some defensive players in this draft. I know they have 2 first-round picks. Maybe they go get the best edge rusher and the best quarterback that they can find out there. Start rebuilding in the first round, and then second round, maybe they go corner, maybe they go secondary member, safety to try to replace Landon Collins, as hard as it is to replace a guy like that. They're in rebuild mode, though. I think they're starting to punt at a time where they don't need to be punting the ball, especially when you look at the rest of the NFC East. Philadelphia was beatable this year. Now they're losing Nick Foles. They could lose Carson Wentz midseason next year, and they're a non-factor anymore. The Cowboys, for as good as they were, they had a good second half. They're not an unbeatable team. And then you look at the Redskins, they're certainly far from unbeatable with their quarterback situation. The Giants, to me, they're punting, they're rebuilding. They shouldn't be. It's about best available player in the draft, but I still think you need to focus on getting a quarterback at 6.
And I'm completely the opposite in this scenario. I do not want them to waste their 6th overall pick on a quarterback that isn't ready or perfect for that team. If they're in love with someone, by all means, you pick them and you go with it and you move forward, regardless if Eli Manning's there or not there. In my opinion, at number 6, you take the best defensive player that you could possibly do because you've already traded away your best defensive player.
Absolutely.
So it's time to go ahead and replace him. If it is a pass rusher, if it is a safety, or it is a corner, whatever you feel like is the best player at number 6, that's who you draft. And if you decide to pick a 3rd round, a 4th round quarterback, by all means, go ahead. But with these first 2 round picks, you need to make sure you're going to establish your defense back to what it was. Take a pass rusher, take someone in the secondary, and go ahead and move forward and play another year with Eli Manning because as much as he doesn't like him, as much as everyone's talking so much crap about Eli Manning, there's still no doubt about this guy. He could still play NFL football. Is he where he was when he was 30, 32? No. But he could still ball with some of the best of them. And let's give him another year. He's given you 2 Super Bowl rings. He's given you Super Bowl MVP trophies to sit there and say, hey, we had this guy at one point in time. Give him one more year. Let him do this. Wait until the draft looks a little bit better on the quarterback side of the draft.
The only problem I have with that, and then we'll move on, is that give him one more year was 2 years ago. Okay, I think this is long since expired. The Giants need to replace him. I don't care if it's Dwayne Haskins. I don't care if it's Kyler Murray. I don't care if it's Will Grier. If you like one of these guys, go out there and get him. And at least get a guy that you can develop behind him and sit there and say the plan is not just Eli Manning going forward. They need to do whatever they can to get that next guy up and ready to take the reins and then get back into competing in the NFL. Because the NFC East is not going to be weak forever. You need to eventually start moving back to where you can capitalize on this. Again, I think this happened at the worst time for them. You've got teams like Philadelphia falling apart. The Cowboys are looking good, but not unbeatable. And then the Redskins still haven't figured things out. If you want a challenge for winning the division, now is the time. Now is not the time to go trade Odell Beckham for nothing. Okay, we don't have to go into that. Aaron, if you are looking for more of an in-depth look at the Giants and what we think they should do in the draft, we have an episode where we did a mock draft. We have an episode where the community did a mock draft that just came out yesterday. Look for 125. There's plenty more information in there if you want to go in more in depth on what we're talking about here.
And definitely in the future, we'll go over every team in the NFL about what they should draft.
Yes.
And what they should be doing throughout all of the league. And Will, real quick, Eli Manning is an overrated crybaby. Man.
Yeah, good. He's right. Nowadays, he's right. This is not the same guy that beat Tom Brady twice in the Super Bowl. It's not even close.
Two-time Super Bowl champion.
Let me just say, it was a good thing he had that defense. Because if he didn't, we would not be talking about Eli Manning.
The only time I heard this man completely complain about anything is the fact that his offensive line can't hold a defensive player back. And he's absolutely right. Besides that, he has not complained. He hasn't missed a game. He's been completely, he's played hurt. He's never been injured. This guy is...
We want to know why he never gets hurt? Because the wind blows and he's on the ground saying, "Don't hurt me, I'm done."
Freaking be it. I'd rather have a quarterback that's my starter playing all 16 games instead of Jimmy G, who tried to make a football move as a quarterback and got hurt and ended a season that might have been a little bit better.
I think I'd take Jimmy G's 5 games or whatever he gave us over an entire season to be Eli Manning, but we'll go into that later. Drew, I want to talk about Vince McMahon and his XFL. Obviously, you can smell blood in the water here when you see the AAF sitting there saying, we might have to fold, which, whether that's true or not, I don't believe it. But it could be. This isn't the first time we heard the AAF has money troubles. Week 2, they were talking about having troubles reaching their payroll and paying everybody for the week. Are you buying into this, or do you think this is more of a ploy by the AAF to try to get better players into this?
I think it's a 50-50. I think there is truth to these rumors and this talk about how they cannot pay their players, how they're not being able to make a profit in this league. But at the same time, they're looking at, well, we can make a profit if you go ahead and lighten up a little bit and give us some of these players with talent, quit stealing all of them. But like I said earlier, NFL's not going to pay any player to go play somewhere else and get hurt.
Frank says you have a man crush on Eli Manning. And Frank, I think you're right. I think he does. I mean, I've never seen anyone defend Eli Manning like this. So, Drew, props to you to stick with your guns on that. I think it's a tough sell. It really is for me.
I definitely don't.
This was an easier sell 3 years ago. Like,
I'm not saying like, he's going to win the Giants a Super Bowl. What I'm saying is,
well, then why is he there?
Why reach? Why reach for a quarterback that isn't your future? If they're looking
at
Kyler Murray, I'm telling you right now, if they're looking at Kyler Murray, they're looking at Dwayne
Drew's
Haskins.
Down on the quarterbacks this year, and I have too.
If they're looking at these quarterbacks and going, none of these guys right now fit my organization, why in the world would you draft them just because it's a need now? That quarterback position is so important that if you have a 6th-round pick, it's time to pick a player that fits your defensive team, because you have no defense. You don't have a defense. You have a quarterback. Yeah, he's not winning you Super Bowls, but guess what? Neither is a rookie quarterback either.
True, but 3 years from now, that rookie quarterback might win you a Super Bowl. 3 years from now, Eli Manning ain't win you anything.
That's why you wait a year or two.
Aaron agrees with you. He says Eli Manning is elite. He's just been fluffed with no offensive line at this point. And I think he was going for something other than fluffed, but that's okay. I'm not going to say you're right. I think you're absolutely wrong there, Aaron. And I get it. You might be a Giants fan.
Jerry? No, you did not agree with Jacob. No. I got it.
Obviously, that Chiefs bond, I'm getting in between it. I'm driving a wedge between you guys.
He broke my heart.
Going into this really quick, though, Aaron, here's why I don't think that's the case. I think, as a Giants fan, and I think you're a Giants fan, it's very easy to fall in love with somebody who's helped you out in the past, but football isn't a romantic game. You can't sit there and say, man, one more time would be great, because Eli is not that same guy. He's not the guy that's going to deliver that for you anymore. He's had much more physical decline than guys like Ben Roethlisberger or Phillip Rivers. He's not anywhere close when you watch him play. And yes, I'll agree with you. He would be better with a better offensive line. But do I think if you could put him behind the Cowboys' offensive line from a couple of years ago when they were the most elite group in the NFL. Do I think he wins the Super Bowl with them? Probably not. So from that standpoint, as a GM, you need to move on. Even if you're going to make the wrong decision here, you need to at least try to do something because you know already right now we're not winning a Super Bowl with Eli Manning. Okay. All right, I'm glad Eli Manning managed to sneak his way into the topics today.
Hold on, I got a lot of comments here to get back. Frank says Tom Brady is a 6th-round pick. He didn't look elite coming into the NFL. That's where I'm getting at. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Frank. I'm talking about why give that 6th-round pick off to a quarterback you're not in love with. Wait till the 3rd round. Wait till the 4th round.
6th overall pick is what he was trying to say. Yes.
I mean, but
I get what you're saying.
But that's what I'm saying is why it says 6th round pick. That's what I'm getting at is why in the world would you pick your 6th overall pick to a quarterback you're not in love with? Why would you do that? That's what I'm saying. If they're in love with someone, by all means, take them. But if not...
But you're saying don't reach. And I agree with you. If you go in there and you're like, man, the top end of this class is absolutely terrible, I have no problem waiting to the second round and see if you can get somebody like Daniel Jones there. Don't sit there and reach on a quarterback that you don't believe in. But I think it's clear they believe in Dwayne Haskins. I can tell Gettleman doesn't like Kyler Murray because he's already come out and said, we don't like short quarterbacks. We're going to have a big statue in the pocket, and we're going to try to go with that. The question is going to be, does he believe in Dwayne Haskins? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. If you think he can be the next best quarterback for you, then you take him.
You take him.
But if you're totally sold on him and you're like, there's no way this guy is any good, I'm with you on that. Pass on him, take the next best available guy, and live with that.
And I like what David had to say. He says it's the same guy. He is the guy. Michael Jordan in Washington is still MJ. Kobe, last couple of years, is still Kobe. You give us championships
I disagree.
And then don't care about a diva who went to the playoffs one time and got rid of all the money in the receiver. I'm with him.
I disagree. Kobe's last year, I'm not going to talk about MJ because I think that's a little bit different of a story, but Kobe's last year where he's on his goodbye tour and he could barely move anymore because his legs are worn out, and it's really just turned your franchise into a farce where every game everybody's showing up just to watch Kobe shoot a few baskets and not really play and not really be competitive. It's not the same thing. And obviously you're talking about different sports. Football is much more competitive than the NBA is because realistically the NBA there's only a few good teams, and football there's 16 teams every year that could win a Super Bowl at least every year in the NFL. So it's even harsher in the NFL than it is in a sport like basketball. But you do not owe this guy anything. You know what you gave him to make up for that? Those hundreds of millions of dollars he's made across his career. If he is not the guy going forward, you need to go get the guy moving forward that's going to win you a Super Bowl, because unlike the NBA, GMs don't last forever in football, and they do have turnover in basketball, but there is very little forgiveness in football. If Dave Gettleman wants to stay the Giants GM, he needs to get them back to competitive, and you can't just throw a couple of years away saying, well, Eli's deserved it to stay here up to this point. So I'll disagree with you on that point.
Let me say one last comment, and then we need to move on, is it doesn't matter who you pick. At this point in time, you're obviously rebuilding that offensive line. Maybe these moves that you made this year, trading Odell Beckham away and picking up the guard Zeitler, it fixes it. It fixes your offensive line. But if you put a rookie behind that offensive line, I don't care who he is, he's going to struggle staying in the pocket.
They're doing things to address it. I'm not going to say it's fixed overnight, but they brought Zeitler in. They've tried to buy at a left tackle. I mean, they've done things to do it. And that's true. That's true. They have Will Hernandez, a good guard they drafted last year.
If you're going to hurt someone, hurt Eli Manning. Why are you going to hurt Haskins?
And that's been my argument. My argument is leave that guy in there until you're ready. But my point is, I think the Giants are getting closer to ready. This isn't an Arizona situation where there's nobody to throw to and nobody to protect him. Will Hernandez was a great guard last year for them. Zeitler was a great guard for Cleveland. They're expecting him to slot in very well and play well. They have a good left tackle, not a great one, on top of it that they acquired from the Patriots, and I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. I didn't say it before because I couldn't think of what his name is. They paid him way too much money for what he actually is, but he's still a halfway decent left guard. Nate Solder, thank you. So they've got 3 out of 5. That's pretty good. They're getting there on the offensive line. If you bring in another guy or two in this draft, we could be talking about how the Giants went from one of the worst offensive lines to a very good one. So, again, we're off topic here. We didn't want to dwell on this, but it's been interesting, and that's fine.
It's an interesting conversation, yeah.
Absolutely. I think this talk about the Giants not being good in the offensive line, and Thomas was even talking about this. He said a statue in the pocket, they can't really have that. I think you can, now that they've addressed the offensive line. They've made great strides to make this offensive line better. The question is it going to work? And it's always a maybe on the offensive line. So, we'll see.
Guys, I love all your comments. Frank, it's a possibility they take an offensive lineman at number 6 or definitely their second pick. Who knows, man? We got to keep moving on, or we could talk about this all night long.
Absolutely. Now, real quick, Brian also says game manager is better than a fresh out of college quarterback. But is he going to be better than that quarterback 3 years from now? And eventually you're going to have to do that because that's going to be the argument forever. 2 years from now, you're going to be like, well, why do we need a fresh out of college quarterback? We have Eli Manning. You have to make the change eventually, is my point. And why not now that you're going to not be competitive? Because they're not going to be competitive, right? Everybody's saying that. I don't think anyone's out there putting bids on the Giants to win the Super Bowl this year, are they?
Oh, I'm sure.
Let me know in the comments if you got money on the Giants.
No, I don't know about any of these guys, but I'm sure somewhere in Vegas there's someone putting money on the Giants.
Somebody's fading it. I agree. That's okay. Drew, just one last point about the AAF and everything. Look, if they are going to go out of business because they can't afford to pay everything after a $250 million infusion of cash, I think this is one of the worst run leagues ever. And let me tell you this. Here's where they need to address it. Or here's where they need to start saving money. They need to get guys like Maurice Jones-Drew and Marvin Lewis out of the officiating, or not the officiating booth, but like the TV booth. They need to get them out of there because while I don't disagree, they know what they're talking about. These guys have been in the NFL. They've been successful in that. They're very boring to listen to, and I guarantee you these guys are making a lot of money to do it. They need to spend less money on that, and they need to bring in people who are interesting to listen to. Because when I hear these two guys, and they put them next to each other in the booth with the play-by-play guy, when I hear that, I mean, it makes me want to turn the TV off. I always put it on mute, and I sit there and watch it for that. I mean, it's painful, and you're probably paying a lot of money to that for guys that are not entertaining to listen to, and I think that is more important out of the commentary booth is, are they interesting to listen to, or do they know what they're talking about? It needs to be the right mix of the two, but it needs to be more interesting than know what they talk about, right?
I am completely there with you. Man, it is so hard not
and it's nothing against those guys, but together they don't work.
It's so hard not to talk about these guys' comments. Sharif, I'm glad you could join us. Better late than never by all means.
Absolutely.
Frank wants to know why his Eagles are falling apart. Who says they're falling apart, man?
I did, like 20 seconds ago.
Well, don't listen.
Well, you're losing defensive linemen.
Don't listen to Jake.
Well, here, I'm not trying to dog them, Frank, because I still think they're a threat next year.
Don't listen to him.
I'm not trying to dog them because I still think they're a threat next year. But the defensive line, you're starting to lose people.
He's a Titans fan.
Well, I didn't say the Titans are winning the Super Bowl, did I? The defensive line is losing pieces. They've done a good job bringing a guy like Malik Jackson in to help out, but they're losing guys like Jernigan. They're losing Michael Bennett on the outside as well. The secondary was no great shakes, especially once Darby went down injured. They really didn't have any kind of answer in the passing game. They're losing linebackers on top of it in Hicks. You know, Michael Kendricks, I know he's not on the team anymore, but he might be going to jail as well. They need some refreshing if they want to stay competitive. And maybe this is the draft for it to happen. But so far from what I've seen, them losing a quarterback when you've needed a backup quarterback for these past couple of years, them losing defensive players, eventually everyone's window comes to a close. I wonder if Philadelphia is starting to approach that point in time.
These guys got me cracking up. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And Sharif agrees with me. He says Jones and Lewis are boring. They are, man.
They are.
And you can put one of those guys in there who knows everything, but isn't the. It's like the Drew of the show. He knows everything, but maybe he's not the most fun guy to listen to. I'm kidding, of course. But you can survive with one of those guys in the booth as long as there's somebody else like Tony Romo that's very interesting and very lively that you can put next to them that's interesting to listen to. But you can't be paying these guys probably millions of dollars to both be out there boring me. You just can't do it. And I think that's where the AAF needs to start saving some money. Go find a local radio DJ that knows something about football that's more interesting to listen to.
These guys are eating spaghetti for dinner.
And I was going to say, then pay them $50K instead of paying these guys millions of dollars, at least hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this. Jones-Drew doesn't work for free, and he shouldn't. But I'm just saying, with what you get and what they're probably paying, the cost versus value does not add up.
Bo said Kendricks won't go to jail. Mark my words, he paid the money back.
Still, insider trading is kind of frowned upon. Just ask Martha Stewart. She went to jail for it as well. Actually, she went to jail for lying to prosecutors. Not the same thing, but basically the same thing. I don't know. I'm not sure if he's going to jail or not. He did come clean, and usually that gives you a little bit of leeway with prosecutors. But it's pretty rough. I'm not going to lie. He's not in a good spot. I wouldn't want to be Michael Kendricks right now. I don't know if he's going to jail or not. He might have enough money and everything and influence to get away with it, but That's what we thought about Martha Stewart, and she wound up doing time in the big house. So I don't know.
You're messing with Wall Street there, though.
Well, it's the same thing.
I mean, it is. I guess
the same thing. They're both insider trading.
Yeah, he's screwed.
The moral of the story is don't ever talk to the police, or you wind up in jail like Martha Stewart. Anyway.
Plead the fifth.
Exactly. That's why you have a Fifth Amendment. Moving forward, we're not talking about that. I want to talk about these rule changes here, Drew. Because the NFL, if you haven't heard, is going to change how they approach pass interference, and they're going to look at it and say, these are challengeable calls now. You can challenge not only when a pass interference flag is thrown, but non-calls as well to address the Rams versus Saints debacle we saw. Is this the right move?
It is. I do think it's the right move, and I know everyone's freaking out, but guess what? There's still 2 challenges. There's no challenges in the 2 minutes left in the halves. I mean, everyone's talking about it being prolonged, but it's not going to be. I think this is the right move. Was the ball tipped? Was it not tipped? Did he hit him too early? Things like this matter, especially in a game like that.
I think if they do this right, it's going to be good. But really quick, let me go to the comments here. Sharif said, Blaine Gabbert to the Buccaneers. The Titans just lost their missing piece to go to the Super Bowl. Well, we might need him. Honestly, when you look at the injury history.
See you, Frank.
If you look at the injury history for Marcus Mariota and for Ryan Tannehill, they may come down to the Titans' third quarterback. We'll see about that.
Sharif also said, Martha Stewart went to jail for not stitching. #gangsta.
Well, actually, she went to jail because she cooperated with the feds on this, and then they said, you have some small inconsistency.
She hangs out with Snoop Dogg.
Well, she does. Well,
and he killed somebody.
Martha might have too. We don't know. Let's go back to the NFL rule change because I want to talk about this. If the NFL does this right and they stay on point, it needs to be overwhelming evidence, kind of like a turnover, where it needs to be absolutely clear that they got the call wrong. If they stay on that, I'm okay with this. I think it'll be a good rule change. And let's face it, the Saints needed to be able to challenge that at least in the last game. But what I'm worried is going to happen is every time you get to the fourth quarter and somebody needs a touchdown left with 3.5 minutes, that red flag's going to come out because they want to challenge anything where some guy touched somebody.
So let him waste it.
But is it a waste? I'm worried that these refs, you're going to be on the road, you're going to be in New England, you're going to be in Kansas City where it's loud and these fans get into it. It's a home game, and this is a call the home team needs. And those refs are going to want to go out there and give it to him because, yes, he did touch him. It's going to be the death of let the guys mix up with each other. And that's the best part of football, right? You love to see those contested catches where guys have their hands on each other. I don't want to see a repeat of the Seahawks Super Bowl where they were just mugging those receivers for Denver. I don't want to see that. But I also don't want this to go the other way and have the NFL where cornerbacks can't do anything to put their hands on the receiver or anything like that, or the red flag comes out and you see a 40 or 50-yard penalty come in.
Yeah, let's back it up a minute. I mean, Joseph saying that IP rule is going to make the game way too long, going to turn into baseball. Let's take a step back.
And I don't think that's going to happen.
Challenges.
And you get a third if you're right on all of them. But I agree with you. They did a good thing to tie it to
2 challenges. We have had 2 challenges for a while now, and it has really not prolonged the game at all. And, I mean, it's still there. There's still tons of times that they could honestly challenge plays that happen on the field, and they don't do it. That's when the coach got to decide, is it worth my challenge here?
Well, I think you're just going to start saving these challenges
then
up.
Let them save it.
Well, let me listen. Or hear me out here. They're going to save these challenges up towards the end of the game, and they're going to sit there and say, I could pick up 40 yards from this. It may cost me a timeout, but I can pick up 40 or 50 yards. And especially for teams like the Titans that we don't really throw the ball, of course you throw that flag.
And
because
remember,
if you get the call...
And remember, it could go completely the opposite, and they could have offensive pass interference, and then they're backing up. They got to pay attention to what's going on. This, I get it. I understand completely why everyone's freaking out about this, but I think it's the right move because when you look at the Saints, not saying that they would have gone to the Super Bowl, they got robbed on a play.
And you're right. And I'm saying if it's that clear, let's say the ball isn't touched, and we see that, it is that clear of pass interference, I have no problem with the coaches being able to challenge that because when they miss it, they need to be able to address that. What I'm worried about, though, is that the NFL will not implement it to be just indefatigable proof, or like indefatigable evidence that this actually happened.
So Joseph is saying the defense won't be the same anymore. Why do you say that?
Well, we did see a big change the last time they went with pass interference. I mean, if you look at pre-Seahawks Super Bowl where they were able to put their hands on the receivers a little bit, passing was still much more difficult in the NFL, and nowadays it's a lot easier because you can't touch them.
Guess what?
And some people like to
throw
see
the
that.
ball when you have the ball. Then,
Well, I get what you're saying.
it's not a one-sided affair. Everyone gets this.
That is true. But like I said, if they implement this right, and if they do it right, like you said, if it's clear that these penalties are happening, you should be allowed to challenge it. What I'm worried about, though, is the NFL is going to botch it, because the NFL, if you haven't noticed, has a track record of botching things here lately. I'm worried they're going to make it where somebody's going to sit there and have their hand on a jersey or barely be touching somebody, and then it's going to flip it. And you're okay with this?
Yeah.
Until it happens to the Chiefs.
Well,
and y'all already get all the most pass interference calls against you anyway. But
guess what? I mean, I'm going to be mad regardless because I'm a Chiefs fan, and that's just what we do. And Sharif, he's got an opinion here. He says, or make the pass interference rule where it should be a 15-yard penalty and not the spot of the foul.
The only reason I don't like that, and I know college does it, is especially in the NFL where everybody's fast, if you're worried about getting beat on the long pass, you just tackle the guy. Because 15 yards still beats the heck out of 30 to 40 to 50 yards that some of these pass interference penalties can be. So I like the NFL's rule with it. And again, as long as they stay conservative with this and say it needs to be bad for us to flip this call, then I think the NFL is better for having done this.
Bees likes the change. He says that it'll keep the quarterbacks from throwing up 80-yard bombs and the receivers flopping and getting the call.
I think maybe we do see that.
That's what I said,
and that might be a big part of it.
That's what I said. It could be, honestly, it could be
the offensive side.
Ways.
I agree. I think, again, if this is implemented right, we're going to see a positive change in the NFL, because there are times where pass interference is called and it shouldn't be. And I think that at the very least, the other team should be able to look at it and say, we need a second look at this to decide if this actually was pass interference. So maybe, just maybe, this works out right. The NFL gets something right for once, because this could be good. This could be a good change. I can't wait to see what happens with it, because I'm call me a pessimist here, but I don't know that they're going to sit there and have everything hammered out from day one.
I think it's going to be an over-freaked rule. Everyone's going to talk about it. It's just about the same thing about what was it that just got changed? The helmet-to-helmet rule.
Yeah. Well, that was bad for the first 5 weeks. Then they're like, this is a mistake. Let's stop calling it.
In the preseason, it was landing on a quarterback rule that became huge, and then they kind of backed off on it. Ask Clay Matthews. Rams will find out about that.
Do you think it's going to be the same thing? Where maybe
I
they
think
back
it will
off?
be overlooked a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, over talked about, and then when it actually starts happening, listen, they've got two challenges. They got two challenges. It's not
you get the
change.
third if they get it. And going back,
when does that happen?
There was if you're right twice, you get the third one. It's happened a couple.
Dude,
it
you're never right
but
twice.
usually, hear me out here. Usually, teams don't even throw two flags
Right.
because they're like, "What if I need this again?" So I agree with you. It's still kind of a bit of a rare thing. Here's what I would suggest here, because some people are sitting there saying they need to change the challenge rule. Instead of just adding a third, I would say you get two challenges, and if you're right on both of them, you get to keep challenging until you're wrong. When you're wrong, that's when I would call it off, because there are times where some of these things need to be reviewed. Also, people are asking, are they going to do this with holding? Man, I hope not, because you're going to be able to nitpick on every one of these
Talk about
plays.
a penalty that literally happens every single play in the NFL. I know everyone's going, there's pass interference every play. No, not necessarily.
There's certainly much less pass interference than there is holding.
Remember, they get the 5 yards, and then after that, this is my opinion, and I know it's so hard to sit there and say because it's an opinion call, but if there's not anything stopping the process of a receiver going to his spot, I don't really see a pass interference. If he stops the momentum of the receiver, then it's pass interference, in my opinion, because the DBs, I cannot talk. The DBs are always a step behind because they don't know where they're running. And they're backpedaling. They got to move with them. And don't get me wrong, this is what makes corners the best or not the best. But
exactly.
You got to put that hand on his shoulder. You got to put that hand on his waistline.
And I'm okay with
and that keeps you around that guy.
Especially because there's times when you're in zone coverage and you need to be looking at the quarterback. Yeah, you need to throw your hand on him and sit there and say,
that's the penalties I don't want them to be calling because
I agree.
In the rule books, that's pass interference.
I totally agree here. Now, Sharif also says he wants to see an extra challenge flag. I wouldn't be totally against that if you just went with 3, rounded it out, make it like timeouts. I'm okay with that. Again, I say give them the extra flag until they're wrong, because if there's a bad crew and they keep messing these calls up, you should be able to keep going. You shouldn't be limited by the number of challenge flags as long as you continue to be right. And I know it's going to slow the game down a little bit, but again, you already have those challenge flags. So the game, I don't think, is going to change much on the speed for it. Maybe you see them thrown a little bit more because pass interference is it's a judgment call. Maybe you see them come out a little bit more. But realistically, you're talking about adding, 3, 4, 5 minutes to an already 3-hour game, I really don't see that big of a change. So for everyone sitting there saying it's going to be too much time, I'm going to say let's see what it looks like before we hit the panic button on that.
Yes, well, I did mess up. Okay? You make fun of me more, I know where you live.
And Bo also agrees with me. He says young DBs are going to be, he says DBs are going to be tackling everyone rather than give up the 15 yards, especially in the NFL where you're almost as fast as that receiver. In college, you see less of it because there's gaps in talent between these guys. But in the pros, there's not that big of a gap. So if I'm burnt, the first thing I'm going to do is take his legs out and not have to worry about it. I mean, realistically, I would rather give up 15 yards than or 20 or 30 than give up that 45-yard bomb that Aaron Rodgers just threw over my head.
But I believe it was Bo that also said you can't do that because corners will do that penalty to stop a touchdown.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, and that's why I don't think you can go with the college rule in the NFL. I like the way the NFL has it set. And Sharif says holding happens all the time. You're absolutely right about that. No argument here, right?
No.
All right, guys. One last thing I want to talk about here because I like to highlight when I'm right. Obviously, if you haven't been watching the show for long, I like to talk about when I'm right here. I was saying Nate Oates is moving on from Buffalo as soon as this tournament is over, and lo and behold, Drew, he's gone. He's out of Buffalo. He's heading on to Alabama, and I want to ask you here really quick here. The SEC, to talk about basketball for a minute, change gears on everybody.
Alabama has a basketball team?
Exactly. Is the SEC focusing more on basketball? I mean, we've seen guys like Rick Barnes go to Tennessee. Obviously, all I can say is Calipari now has some legitimate competition in division.
When you're, I don't want to call it monopoly, but when you are the best of something that you do and you have an option to be the best at something else that you could do, why wouldn't you do it? And I think it is a focus of the SEC to go ahead and try to bring in better coaches for their basketball league.
Absolutely.
And try to bring in the best talent, the best way that they can do to make more money. It's all about the green.
I totally agree with you, but even beyond the money, I think they just want to compete with each other because, again, you see these schools, these ADs, they're human too. They want to compete with each other. They see, oh man, I just played Kentucky and beat them in football, but they're killing me in basketball. I want to beat them in everything. So I have no problem with Alabama making this move. I think it's a great move by them. I like to see Nate Oates move to a program that's going to have some more money, more financial backing, because I think he's one of the best college coaches that's up and coming. I'm not going to say he's Coach K. I'm not going to say he's Calipari.
No, but up and coming. It's the right move.
I think him moving to Alabama might make some exciting basketball in the SEC. I like to see this move as well. It sucks for Buffalo, but then again, it sucks being a small program. That's just the way things work. The question is going to be, can a school like that replace as good of a coach as Nate Oates is? Because in my opinion, I think a lot of the reason they made it as far into these tournaments as they have is because their coaching has been as good as it is. Yeah. I mean, there hasn't really been any single player that I'm like, yeah, he's just that good that's carried Buffalo,
I agree.
All right, Drew, before we get out of here, man, I want to do some final thoughts here. Rule change, big deal or no?
No, I think it's the right move.
AAF, folding in the first year or no?
It's a good possibility, 50-50.
Jordy Nelson retiring, good move or no?
Man, it sucks to see a great like him go.
I hear you. All right, man. Well, one more. Nate Oates, I don't want to leave him out. Nate Oates going to Alabama?
For him, it's the right move.
For Alabama, it's the right move. I think the only loser here is Buffalo.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. All right, man. Before we get out of here, we want to do some special thanks, guys. Great show. We appreciate all of your comments. I know we didn't spend as much time with them as we normally like to, but we will be back on Friday to talk about the college tournament, which has been off for the past day or two, and we'll be back to talk more NFL as news comes up. We'll be talking pretty much anything. We have baseball starting here in a day or two as well. Not sure how much of that we're going to talk about, but it may sneak its way in here too. So, Drew, special thanks here.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we appreciate all the comments, all the love that you guys give us. And if I missed anybody in this, I apologize. I know Andrew and Zachary, you throw some comments at the very end, but we're gonna go ahead and call this show an end. But real quick, special thanks to Shay, Will, Brian, Jerry, Andrew, Frank, Aaron, Thomas, David, Sharif, Joseph, Deo, Bo, Bees, Andrew, and Zachary. Guys, thank you so much for all the comments. Thank you so much for all the loves. We appreciate it so much.
Nathan also says, before I get out of here, I'll do one or two of these comments. Nathan asks, is Jordy Nelson a Hall of Famer? Eventually, yes, maybe 30 or 40 years down the road. But there's such a backlog on these guys. I don't see it anytime soon. Also, Bo says, when are we on again? We will be back on Friday. Again, guys, we're on Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the NFL offseason. We'll switch it up to kind of match the NFL schedule a little bit during the season. We'll tell you about that later. But for now, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7:45 Eastern, 6:45 Central. we'll be back to talking about pretty much everything going on in sports. I mean, nothing's off the table. We'll talk lacrosse if we have to.
We will, and definitely women's softball and volleyball. We love those sports.
Thanks for the love. We will see all of you guys later. For Sports Around the Bar, I'm Jake, your bartender. This is Drew, and we will see you guys on Friday.
See ya.